Recording. Okay. Hey, beautiful beings. Welcome in, whether you're watching this morning, this afternoon, or this evening. My name is Lindsay Banks. I'm an author, shaman, and channeler, and founder of Temple Woman. And today I am very pleased to be joined with Steve Nobel. So welcome in, Steve.
Hi, Lindsay. Nice to chat to you.
Thank you. So Steve Nobel, for those of you who don't know, he is the author of 6 non-fiction books, the 2 most recent, Starseed and The Spiritual Entrepreneur. He was the director of a not-for-profit spiritual organisation called Alternatives for 13 years before leaving in the winter solstice 2012. He then began his own healing and awakening work and created a healing system called Soul Matrix for Starseeds. He's got a library of free resources, including meditations and transmissions to help starseeds, which are freely available on his website and YouTube channel. The meditations and transmissions so far are played all over the world, and so far you have over 145,000 subscribers, which is amazing, and you regularly run events in the UK.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm busy. It's actually 146 now. It clicks up quickly, so.
Wow,
yeah.
It's amazing. So I was first introduced to your work back in 2018 by a friend who'd recommended your transmissions to listen to. And so I've been following you for the last 4 years, and every time you have a new transmission now, I'm always listening to it, and the names of them are just amazing. So if anyone hasn't yet listened to Steve Nobel's transmissions, highly recommend going and checking out his YouTube channel.
Thank you.
First of all, Steve, let's go back to the beginning. So when did your foray into like the spiritual world begin?
Probably as a teenager, I was starting to get interested in yoga, macrobiotics, alternative stuff. I was interested in, I went to Foyles, but in London, there's biggest bookshop at the time was Foyles. It was before Waterstones and before the internet, of course. And the only books I could find was yoga or the occult. So I did buy some occult books and start reading them and find out, like, they were talking about the Kabbalah and old organizations like the Golden Dawn, you know, Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn and all this kind of stuff. And it, like, wow, there's this hidden spiritual stuff going on. And all my friends were into football and drinking and chasing girls and things. And so I was becoming a bit weird for them. I did go and visit Spiritist headquarters, church in London somewhere, Belgrave Square, I think it was at the time. And I went to Theosophical Society, and I was reading spiritual books. I was reading a guy called Lobsang Rampa, who was very big in the 70s. Remember Lobsang Rampa?
I've read one of his books. I can't remember which one it was, but yeah, I read that about 6 years ago. It was brilliant.
Yeah, I wrote to him when he was still alive, and he wrote back. And you know, he was doing things like his cat channeled a book. He wrote a book channeled by his cat and all these kind of things. And so it was really kind of. But then I got the message. You know what? What I'm looking for, I can't find. So I tried normal. I tried to be normal. I got a normal job. I got married at the age of 21. I had 2 children by the age of 25. And so I was living a normal life with the kind of normal responsibilities and all of that, going, you know, school, pickups and everything. And my then wife had she was Portuguese, there's a Portuguese tribe, and there's always an uncle to go and pick up from the airport. So my life was really like married man with, you know, totally immersed in family. And then I started to, in the 90s, early 90s, wake up. And this was not really a good thing for my now ex-wife. She didn't like it, and I was going to workshops but hiding it, saying I'm going to a workshop for work. You know, this is a work thing, training. And of course, you can't hide it forever. It's a bit like my secret affair. It was like my secret affair with spirituality, you know. And then, I mean, eventually it did cause us to split, because it was really, she was a Catholic, and this is something too scary for her that I would be interested in anything outside of that. And so we split, and I then just dived in. I felt I could dive in everything. I started training in lots of things. I trained with a woman called Jill Edwards, who wrote a book called Living Magically back in the 90s. And she was really the awakener for me. I trained with her for several years. And then I went on to volunteer alternatives and I started training in shamanism and metaphysical. So it's like the earth-based shamanic side and the metaphysical side both grabbed me, because I wanted this kind of cosmic, but I also wanted something very earthy. So that was my training, still is really, the earthy and the cosmic and how they join together, really. So that's my awakening. It's a bit strange at the beginning, and I had to really find a tribe to help support me. But they came, you know, and now there's a whole massive tribe around, you know, they're all around, so it's nice. Yeah.
Yeah. So did you experience like a dark night of the soul at any point through your awakening, or was it quite sort of transitional?
So the first awakening in the early 90s was magical. I mean, it was challenging because of children and divorce. That was the challenging factor. But it's all very practical. It wasn't a dark night. It was really me learning about magic, and at the same time dealing with how do I deal with difficult divorce, really. My second awakening was 2010, and that was a dark night of the soul. And I went into the dark night for 6 years or something. And that was really difficult but necessary. And I think the reason I went in it was because I didn't really appreciate what the dark was really about. I didn't really appreciate about dark forces or lower energies. I mean, I'd had psychic attack here and there, but it was kind of people being a bit silly, really. But the dark night was like, oh, there are lower astral realms and there are lower beings and lower races. And so I got introduced to them, and that's like, goodness. Because when I was doing shamanic journeying, there's a lot of, in shamanism, you can go to the upper world, which is where the angels are. You can travel in the middle world, which is kind of astral traveling type of thing, or you can go down into the underworld. And I used to go a lot into the underworld, and I never found anything dark. It was all very beautiful and lovely. And the dark night was, oh, there's this other side of going down. And so I spent, in the dark night, it was probably about 18 months where I was being attacked every day and every night. That was the most severe time, like demonic lower energies, which I'd never encountered before. And I had no defenses against them. I didn't know what to do. So now in the work I'm doing, a lot of it is about clearing the dark and talking about the dark. You know, I'm not just talking about angels and light. I'm talking about the light and the dark, but I can only really do it because I've been there. I've been through the dark night, and that was my initiation into, I needed to do it to help people come out of the dark, because a lot of my work is about clearing dark and helping them connect to the light. And, you know, and I think a number of teachers don't talk about the dark. They only talk about the light, which is really powerful for a time. But I think we're all going to encounter the dark at some point, because this planet has not been a light planet for a long time, really.
Yeah. And I think, you know, I remember when I had my first dark night of the soul back in 2017, my friend had passed away, and I didn't even know what it was until sort of like I was coming out of it. And I was like, why do they call it a dark night? I was like, because mine lasted 6 months, but it could last, like you said, a number of years. It's not just one night. It's like...
No, it's the dark nights. It's the dark years or months of the soul. Yeah. Yeah.
And also about, you know, how you're talking about these lower entities, it's only sort of come into my reality probably over the last 6 months, where I'm actually seeing people who have been consumed by that darkness, you know, who have these demons or these negative entities attached to them. And I think, like you said, you know, we do actually have to acknowledge that there is a dark side as well as the light side. We can't just all be like, oh, it's all fabulous, it's all love and light. You know, we really need to acknowledge those dark things as well, don't we?
I think so. I mean, in the great universal spectrum of soul evolution, a lot of that spectrum is light. You know, I think a vast majority of it is passing through light, and beautiful realms and planets and having a lovely time. But there's a bit at the end of the spectrum, which is we're at this kind of 3D going back to the light on this planet. This end, we are able to touch what's really at the bottom rung of absolute separation from light, absolute darkness, absolute isolation, alienation. That energy there, which allows the whole polarity to work out, really, because we can only hold, like the polarity of a battery. Some energies have to hold the dark, and I think there are souls that volunteer. Okay, I'll volunteer. I'll go and hold the dark, and you know. I'm pretty sure in some lifetimes I've passed through the dark. I've been through those lifetimes, and they are pretty you know, they are dense and really not very nice. For a soul to enter into dark, they have to experience some really horrible trauma or dark initiations or meetings with the dark, which is really unpleasant. But as I say, it keeps the whole game going, and the game allows a soul to experience the whole range. So yeah, there are some souls holding darkness, but I don't think they're going to be there forever. All souls eventually come back. You know, it's pretty brave of them actually to hold that polarity. Not very nice.
Exactly. No, well, I did I had a download the other day about dark angels, and so I did a YouTube video on those about what is a dark angel, you know, and like you said, it's like that souls come here to really do something which is not very pleasant and not very nice or portrayed to be. And you know, it's like the sort of not sacrifice, but it's, you know, doing things which seem to be really dark, but are for the benefit of the planet, if you like, and the benefit of the earth.
Yeah.
That's my feeling.
Yeah, I think,
So,
I mean, there are souls at the moment on the planet experiencing darkness, aren't there? Just those people in the war. I mean, when I look at the war in Ukraine, it's to even be in that war zone fighting. I mean, obviously, as a civilian fleeing, it might be another thing, but to actively engage in a war at this time of ascension, it's quite something, isn't it? You're involved in the deepest conflict of light, and you know, the good guys and the bad guys, you know, and the whole Ukrainian war is focused a lot of attention, of course, because it's kind of important, these conflicts, because they could spark off into very bigger conflicts. And I think there are dark forces on the planet that wouldn't mind it, really. You know, and I chatted with someone in the British Army not so long ago, and I said, well, what do you think about this war? And he said, oh, isn't it a great way to test out our latest weapons? And I'm like, oh, right. That's an interesting way of thinking about it. A great way of testing these weapons and blowing people up and killing them, you know, quickly. So there are people really exploring that. And there, I mean, in 3D, there are gifts that can be found, but in that 3D world, those gifts are very, very hard. Like you can learn about courage on the battlefield, or you can learn courage in other nice, more pleasant ways, you know, because the soul's journey of awakening takes a lot of courage. But you're not killing anyone, you know. So I think that's the journey I'd rather be on than the one on the battlefield swinging a sword or shooting a bazooka or something, you know. So yeah, there are gifts in the 3D. But
yeah, I feel like I've done that in my past lives where I've been wielding swords and weapons, etc. So thankfully, I'm not having to do it in this lifetime.
Yeah,
thankfully. So grateful. So can you just clarify, so if people are watching this, because the work that you do is with starseeds, so could you just define for the viewers what a starseed is?
Yeah, so to understand the word starseed, you have to really understand before that the word, you know, multidimensional, which is the soul is multidimensional, which means the soul lives many lifetimes. And those lifetimes are not all on the earth plane. Some of them are on the earth plane, and actually this earth plane is just one dimension of the earth. There are other dimensions of the earth. So a starseed comes through higher dimensions and experiences higher realities, and it comes to this world to hold a higher possibility. So basically a starseed will come here and look out at the world and go, this world's a bit crazy, actually. I remember John Lennon in an interview saying the world is run by insane people for insane purposes. And I thought, at the time, I thought, what's he talking about? But now, when you start waking up, you can kind of realize that the world is kind of run that way. So the signs of being a starseed are usually things like high sensitivity. I mean, very high sensitivity usually. And there are some starseeds which are even extreme sensitivity, really. Which I could think of them as more angelic souls. They're very, very sensitive types. There are some starseeds who have really been around Orion, Sirius, Andromeda. They're very kind of, they're often drawn, like I'm really drawn to sci-fi. I like the whole sci-fi thing, and they're drawn to that. I like, oh yeah, this is how different worlds are. I used to love Doctor Who and Star Trek and all of that. There's a draw to alternative living. There's a draw to sustainable living. There's a draw to spirituality. There's a draw to healing centers and working with light body and DNA and all these kind of things that are, what I say, a native of this planet would look at and go, you know, are you crazy? You know, and So someone I know just was going through a bit of a tough period and wanted to see a therapist, and mentioned like there are lower energies and this, and the therapist was saying, well, that sounds like mental illness, you know, that. And so this is the classification, isn't it? That
Yeah.
if me as a starseed went into a therapy session, a regular 3D therapist might think I have a disorder, you know, whereas actually I can see reality pretty well. I'm functioning pretty well. Life's pretty good. It's not that I'm not functioning well. It's just that I might hold some strange beliefs according to the 3D. So my family, my parents were all 3D. My mother, I remember being on the phone once and I mentioned the word angels, and she turned to me and glared at me as if, what are you talking about over there? And my ex-wife is very 3D. My children are living in a very 3D world. My grandchildren are kind of, you know, as grandchildren are in that magical zone. So they're like, hey, granddad, you talk to trees. And you, my eldest now, she's 12, and she says, you've got crystals. I like crystals. Give me some crystals. So I'm always
that's lovely.
giving her crystals. She likes the crystals. Yeah. And the little one, my 3.5-year-old granddaughter, she's really fascinated with all these. I'm surrounded by, you know, like crystal eggs and
yeah.
And this one's kind of a lovely one. My partner brought me this one. This one comes from Avebury. It's kind of a hybrid crystal skull.
Wow, that's
they
cool.
want that one, but they can't have that one. And all my orgonite crystals, which I've got around orgonite. I like these pyramids. I think because I've got a very much an Atlantean Egyptian connection, so I like kind of pyramids of orgonite. So yeah, they're fascinated like that. But yeah, the natives of this planet. So I'm very careful. I'm pretty good now at feeling into someone's energy field pretty quickly. So if I met somebody at a party and they say, "What do you do?" and I felt, well, they're pretty 3D, I just say I'm a coach and an author, because I think they can get that. You know.
Yeah.
The guy I mentioned, the army officer, he kind of says, well, what do you do? And I said something like that. He said, oh, you do mindfulness, because I think in the army mindfulness has gone in there, so they kind of get that. I said, oh yeah, that kind of thing. So I mean, there's absolutely no point trying to explain to someone of a 3D mindset, because I could be sitting here for years and it just wouldn't matter. Nothing I'd say would make any difference to them. But somebody who's a starseed. So I remember this young woman, she kind of sat on the sofa with me. I can't remember where I met her, and she had her arms crossed like this, and she said, so you're the guy who talks about starseeds, aren't you? And there was something about her energy which was like, oh, she is one, but she's just a bit closed. So I just told her everything, and she became a devotee for a while. She was following me every workshop. And so there is so intuition is another big trait of starseeds. Sensitive and intuitive, highly intuitive. Everyone on the planet is intuitive to a degree, but starseeds have a very high, because the natives of the planet, their intuition is from the heart down. It's more of a gut intuition, whereas starseeds can have the gut and also the heart upwards, which is universal. They get guidance and they get whispers and they get nature speaking to them, which a native would not have, really, or they dismiss it totally. So there are all these kind of signs of being one, and I'm sure all the people following me on YouTube and following you, Lindsay, are going to be starseeds, because otherwise they think you're completely batty.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, I have had, like, I often get that, you know, someone will they'll send me an email or they'll drop me a message and they're like, you're going to think I'm crazy. And I just say to them before they even go on, I'm like, look, I speak to aliens. I'm like, if you can get crazier than that, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that just helps put people at ease. Do you know what I mean? They're like, okay, she sounds crazy now compared to what I'm going to say. But like you said, you know, I'm very much, I remember when I was 18 and I was doing my A levels, and one of the questions was about, oh, how did we come here? You know, was it Darwinism? Was it evolution? You know, how did we begin on the planet Earth? And I stuck my hand up and I was like, it's none of those. I says, we're here as part of an experiment and from aliens. And there was like this tumbleweed moment, and then everyone started laughing. And I was like, I felt like it was true at the time. But then after that, I was like, I'm never speaking about it again. So it took me like 15, 16 years before I started talking about it again.
Yeah. I would never talk about it at school. You know, no, it's just too closed an environment, really. So yeah, I think we have to be careful who we're talking to. I did have one friend who just seemed to talk about to anyone. She didn't care. To anyone, she would talk about what she, you know, was in her mind. I remember going to a dinner party. It was a meal, I think. There was about 6 of us, and these guys were all kind of Oxford graduates, and they were saying, well, what do you do? And I just said, well, I'm a coach and an author. And she just said, I'm a, you know, light body teacher. There's a set, and she just, and I saw their faces where they're looking like, oh, and they said, oh, that's nice. And they were very polite, but I don't think they knew what to say.
Yeah, no. And like, I've done a lot of like formal networking, you know, for the last few years, and I very much try and engage my audience, like you said, you know. So for one group, it was myself and 9 men in a room, and they were like, what do you do? And I just said, I speak to dead people. I was like, I'm just going to keep it as simple as I can, you know. And they could get that. Whereas, like you said, if I'd gone off and said, oh, well, you know, I do shamanic work and I do this healing and I speak to these, it would have just gone over their heads and they would have had no idea.
Yeah. Well, I remember I went to I used to do witch camps, which was like training in Wicca, and they're all very beautiful, and it was like Harry Potter, really. And coming back from one of these witch camps, my partner at the time, long-term partner at the time, was sitting there talking to this young woman, and she said, oh, where are you doing? And she's like, oh, we've been to a witch camp, and we've been, and I was like, oh my God, what is she saying? And so I went over there and I joined the conversation, and she was an evangelical Christian. My partner, and she's just like, and her parents were evangelical Christians, sitting kind of opposite on the carriage, listening to this conversation. And I had to kind of calm it down, going, well, you know, it's all about light, it's all about connection. There's different ways, you know. I do believe Jesus Christ was an avatar. And she calmed down, and then I just said to my partner, please do not just say to anyone. But I think one of the things in the old occult tradition was it was kept a secret for a reason, because it was a very 3D world. Now the world's shifting so we can come out more, but there are still times where we have to be careful. We don't, you know, as it Jesus said, don't throw pearls before swine, they'll just trample them into the mud. And you have to be careful about, if you're offering wisdom or offering light, you don't just offer it to people who are just going to trample it into the mud.
No,
it's pointless, really, you know.
Yeah.
It's a disservice.
So it is disservice, yeah. So I want to ask you about your transmissions as well, Steve. So like I said, some of the names of them are just beautiful and they seem very sort of galactic. So how do you channel your transmissions? Do you sit down with the intention that you're going to have one in, or does it come as a download?
So in the early days, back in 2016, when it started, it was like, it started in Greece when I was feeling this pressure on my head. And I'm like, what is that? I was sitting meditating in this little chapel by the sea, and there's this pressure on my head. It took me a couple of days to work out someone's trying to connect with me and someone wanted to download something. So I think the first transmission was the Earth Star Goddess, which was a goddess energy, which at the time I resisted, because I really resisted thinking, I'm not a god, I'm not a woman. I don't know if I should be channeling goddesses, you know. But anyway, I said, all right then, and I did that one. And in the early days, I just wait. I'd go in the bath, or I'd sit by the sea and I just wait, and they'd come, and I'd have to work out, what is this? I'd run it through my body just to see, what if this is a transmission meditation, well, how does it begin? How does it end? What's the big steps? There's something not working. And when I felt it clicked and worked, I would put it out. And it was slow. It would take sometimes a week or more, you know. But these days, I realized at a certain point, hey, I can initiate conversations with spirit and say, what about this? And so these days I'm more, I don't just wait now, I just initiate. Sometimes I get the download when I'm waking up, and it just comes instantly and I just record it. But more often I'll say, how about, like, what was a good one? How about one on dealing with, oh yeah, anger, I think was so a client had an anger issue. So I'm like, okay, what do we do with it? So I put it out there and I got the answer back. Okay, dung, 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 dung. And it was quite quick, maybe in a morning, and I put it up. And so that kind of thing happens more and more these days. With the last more recent ones, I thought we should do one for each chakra. Can we do one for every chakra, please? And so so I got these angelic transmissions. Well, yeah, there's one for the heart, which has rose, energy was one of it, and there's another angelic light. So what was coming through was a combination. I kind of, oh, this is really cool. A combination of 2 angelic rays, or a combination of an angelic ray and a crystal, or angelic ray and a kind of flower energy. And I thought, hey, this is really kind of a new shift. So I thought that happened in the last few months. So I thought that's kind of nice, synergizing 2 different energies and seeing how they work together. So I quite like this experimentation of of these energies and seeing how they work. And so I'm the human laboratory for these forces. You know, they give it to me and I'm like, saying, well, let's see if it works. And it's not quite, it's a little bit off. And they'll say, okay, let's adjust it. So it's kind of this kind of thing these days. And it kind of works. So it's much quicker. It can be, I mean, it can be quicker. I mean, some of them are still, there's just too many coming. I might have 3 or 4 at once, and I can't do it like that, you know. So I've got to do one at a time. So there's 3 on the back burner, and then I do one. So one that's coming probably next is healing the inner adolescent, which has been one I've wanted to do for a long time. I've got healing the inner child, a couple of them up there. But the adolescent is often a problem. I know in my own life, adolescence is a problematic area. So I want to do one. So that's coming. It's not fully formed yet. So it's probably, that'll be the next one up, actually, healing the inner adolescent.
So as they come through, do you write them down first, or do you just sort of like sit and then start recording it?
Oh, no, I usually, it starts as a mental process and I start getting, what is this? What's the theme of it? Okay, that's the theme. What's the main areas we have to address? And then what's the detail in between that we have to fill in? And so I'll get a Word doc and I'll write it out. So I need to make sure the structure is clear. If I'm not clear, then nobody else will be clear. So every single meditation transmission has a clear structure, a clear beginning, a clear ending, and the middle bit has to be clear. What is this trying to achieve? I used to work with some guys years ago, and they used to do transmissions, and they would just, whatever comes, you know, let's just walk around. And I said, I can't do that. You know, I can't just open up whatever. I need to know what's the focus of this class or what we're doing. And I work very differently from, and so it wasn't working. It worked okay-ish. I said, well, I'll do my bit, you do your bit. So, but I like to have a clear focus on where's it going. I don't want to lead people all around the universe and then go, well, I don't know what it was about. I hope you enjoyed it. I want people, there's going to be a clear healing, clear opening, a clear thing to it, which I think that's why people like it, because I have a right brain, which is very open and feminine and connected. But I also have a left brain, which is structured. My astrology, my midheaven is Virgo, which is very much about structure. And for me, having an enlightened structure is really important so that people feel safe in a structure. And all magic and all shamanic work was done in a structure of you know, opening a circle or opening energy, calling in directions and things like that. It was never done willy-nilly. There was always some structure of opening that starts a ritual and closes it. Every magical system. And I thought, well, why am I going to be any different from these people who know the way? And I think a lot of channels and teachers these days just kind of channel without any real opening or clearing or making sure they are connecting to, you know, higher energies. Because sometimes I hear people and I think, oh, that's a bit mixed, you know. I don't really, I've had 1 or 2 friends as channels and I've said to them, well, what's your preparation for channeling? They say, oh, well, I just sit down and I open. And I'm like, these days you can't just do that, because anything can kind of connect with you going, hey, I'm Archangel Michael, but actually it's not really Archangel Michael. I have a very rigorous clearing process to clear myself every morning and before every session, and every evening myself and my partner sit down and we go through a rigorous process of clearing and spiritual hygiene. Really, it's like, you know, you have a shower and have a spiritual shower, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, spiritual hygiene, very important.
That's definitely really important right now. Like, I always try and share with people about the importance of grounding and protecting your energy, you know, especially when you're going out into the world, and especially now, like, you need to be protecting your energies before you go in the supermarket, before you're going out into crowds, because otherwise all you're doing is just taking on everyone else's stuff and then going home just absolutely exhausted and wiped because you've just taken so much stuff on.
Yeah. Starseeds often have very open energy fields, which is fantastic. If you're in nature or in a workshop or, you know, something like that, or in a garden. But if you're in a crowded mall or shopping center, you want to really kind of pull it back a bit, because there are energies there that might go, hey, there's a bright light, let's go and hang out with that bright light and see where she wants to go, you know, and you might bring something home that you didn't really want to bring home. It might not be very bad, but it's just like, you know, we don't want to clear, we don't want to have to bother with that kind of thing all the time. So so in Glastonbury, there's, which we talked about before, there's two springs, the red spring, which is an open garden, beautiful space, which you can open your energy field, fantastic. And there's the white spring, which is almost like a Dungeons and Dragons type of space. You know, you're going in, it's lit candles, it's going into this kind of dungeony, it's kind of beautiful, the great pool of cool, very cold water. People go and jump in there for initiations. I went in there once and meditated, and I came out with some followers, you know, in my energy field. And I realized, that space is, for me anyway, it's, you know, you go in, it's lovely in there, but I just kind of shield myself a bit, because there's also people hanging outside who are kind of like, you know, smoking weed, and the energies are not actually that high. I mean, some people in Glastonbury listen to this might be offended, but I always kind of go in, if I go in there, or even if I take a group, I lead retreats twice a year, and I say, go in there, but, you know, I don't want to put any fear in you, but I just think, just be a little bit grounded and protected when you go into that space, just as caution. Whereas in the red spring, fantastic, open it up, it's wonderful nature spirits there, nothing dark at all in that place. I think it's the most beautiful place in Glastonbury, actually.
Yeah. And it's interesting because as well, you don't think, do you, but like, you know, York is beautiful, like, so where I am, but there's also some spaces where there's some quite dark history. And, you know, like, I only recently found out that apparently under the city walls, which so many people walk on and think are beautiful, but apparently when the plague hit York, they ran out of spaces to bury the bodies. So there's a lot of bodies buried underneath that, you know, and I was like, I was shocked. I was like, oh, I never knew that. So it's definitely about, you know, being aware of your space as well, isn't it? As well as like the people that are around you, because there's some entities that just hang around the buildings and the spaces.
Well, I think York has got a pretty dramatic military history, you know, when the Normans came. I think that the Norman garrison was wiped out twice by the Saxon population, and I think it was besieged by William for a while as well. And Vikings, you know, the whole stuff. You know, it's got a very, like London has, you know, London. I was in London. I needed to be in London for a while. I needed to hold the energy there, help hold the energy there. Now I don't need to do that. My role is global, so I'm out of London. I couldn't do this work really and be in London. London's a little bit too heavy for it. I need to be right by the sea, 30 seconds away from the sea down there. So I can just go and, you know, blow the cobwebs off. It's fantastic.
Yeah. So when you started these transmissions, Steve, like, are you surprised by like how popular your transmissions have been on YouTube and how you've like drawn to you, or did you sort of have this and it was something you needed to do?
I never imagined it would be that popular. I just thought it'd be a very niche little group, you know, I'd just be a kind of niche following. Yeah, I'm very surprised actually. And 4/5 of my audience are, I think, probably America as well.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So I've been to America. I did workshops over there, and I was treated almost like some kind of celebrity. And remember people. I remember people, because obviously in this world it's 95% women coming and 5% men maybe. And a lot of these women going, "How I take you to bed with me every night," and there were all these kind of jokes, you know, like, and everyone thought it was hilarious. And I just said to them in a kind of joking way, you know, I know in America you've got guns over here, and probably some of your husbands with shotguns. So I hope they're not waiting for me outside, hearing you talk like this. I think humor is a great way to break some of that kind of projections, you know, about and people going, "Oh my God, it's Steve! Oh my God," you know, and I was like, oh, in England people are much more, "Hi everyone, nice to be here." But in America, they were really like, I was treated like I was Madonna or something, or Elton John.
Wow.
It was a bit of a new experience. I never encountered it before. And to be honest, I say to my partner, if we ever go back to America, you're my security guard. Because I went over there, I didn't have a security guard. She was my security. So then I know people behave themselves. You know?
Yeah.
But yeah, mostly America, Britain, then English-speaking countries. But you know, I look at the statistics. People in Saudi Arabia are listening to me. I think I'd probably be considered a heretic in Saudi Arabia. Countries like Israel, Middle East, there are people. Africa, South Africa, actually, where my partner's from. There's actually a big audience. I think Johannesburg who listen to me, which is amazing. You know, I don't know how they found me. But,
yeah. Wow. So in terms of the soul matrix as well, so basically you've created this space as well, haven't you? You've created your own social media site just for Starseeds.
Yeah.
So how did that come about? So do you like, is your work always inspired? You're following your intuition? It's something you're drawn to?
Yeah, so when I was a director of alternatives, I remember thinking back then, because social media was really, when I first started, there was we didn't really have a website when I first started out. It was really, I think in the early 2000s, we got a website, got on social media, and I kind of realized the power of social media. And I did say, wouldn't it be great if we could create our own social media at the time? I had the vision then, but the means to do it wasn't really available. Building Facebook cost millions, and we didn't have that kind of resources. And then recently, I've got my IT angel. So I've got an IT angel, and I don't know if I just said to him that this is my vision, and of course, I don't know if it's possible. And he said, "Oh, it is possible." And I was like, "Is it? Oh, how?" And from a conversation, I think the vision which I had like 15 years ago became a reality. I'm like, this is exciting, fantastic. Let's do it. So I built it as a way of service for anyone. So, it's free. People go on there. It's got all the Facebook features mostly. It's got groups. It's got direct messaging. You've got a feed. It's like a regular site, really. I mean, I don't have millions to put in it, so it's not got all the bells and whistles, but it's pretty good. And there's about 10,000 on there, I think, that kind of join.
Oh, wow. That's
and every
good.
day I go in and I check what they're saying and what they're posting. I'm Big Brother, so I'm Zuckerberg, Starseed version of Zuckerberg, and I've never had to block a single person in the year or so it's been going. I think I did put a polite message to a couple of people, said, "Could you please tone down, or could you please," and they all were very nice about it. So it's really strange being a kind of big brother, but I'm a nice big brother, very nice.
Yeah, it's like you said though, it's like, I think having those spaces which are safe, do you know what I mean? Because a lot of people don't feel safe sharing the information that's coming through, about awakenings or whatever on Facebook. And I think, because I think when you first launched it, I joined it, and I remember thinking how beautiful to have this space, where others can talk openly, share their experiences without judgment, and ask questions. And I think that's very much what's needed, because if you think of all the social media platforms we have, like, I mean, I love Instagram, but I've been trolled on Instagram myself. But Twitter's very opinionated. Facebook can be very opinionated. So to have a space which isn't so opinionated is actually quite nice.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see people have their own views, but it's not strong opinions. And what I haven't seen, which is good, is people arguing about stuff, which is, I think we don't want to be arguing about stuff. We all have our views, and it's a nice space. And what I do like is that people share in their avatars, which is their kind of profile picture themselves, rather than cartoons or flowers. Because if you go on Facebook, people obviously are not feeling safe because they're not putting their own face up. But I'd say 9 out of 10 people on here are putting, when they do an avatar, they put their own face up, and I really say, "Oh, it's so nice, thank you, welcome, Bob or Jane. Nice to see a real face." And I like to see people's real faces. And it does show that they do feel safe on that platform, which is nice.
Yeah. So you talked about your vision 13 years ago becoming a reality. Do you have a vision now for where you see us heading, if you like, as we ascend?
Yeah, so my current work, which is reaching all the starseeds around the world, anybody who still feels a bit like lost, alone, or lacking a soul tribe, or what I've seen around the spiritual zone is a lot of people doing, here's a free meditation, and by the way, if you like it, join my $10,000 program. And I thought to myself, well, fair enough. I'm sure that program's really good value and people will love it. But there's a lot of people who can't afford 10,000 or 5,000 or even 1,000. What about those people? I've struggled in my life for a time, and I've really appreciated people who've given out really good quality material. Like I remember Cryon, the channel Cryon, for a time, I listened to a lot of his stuff because he was giving it for free. And I thought, well, that's fantastic. I think I needed to hear what he wanted to say. It's for free. It helped get me through a dark period. And I wonder if there are a lot of other people like that. So I put, 98% of stuff out for free. I do webinars and one-to-one sessions, which I charge for because I basically have to pay the rent as well. And, you know, so I do, otherwise, you know, it'd be nice to give everything away for free, but I think it's nice to have some form of exchange as well. But all the stuff on YouTube and all the other platforms are all free. So I don't keep any transmissions really hidden, unless they're specific to a special class or something. It's not a general thing, but mostly it comes through, I give it out, and I get a lot of messages going, oh, I so appreciate this. I think I'm one of the few people, surprisingly, doing it. I don't know why. I think there should be a lot more people doing this kind of thing, because we're in a period of ascension. People need this kind of material to help, you know. We need to be inspired. And so I think I've been through my own journey of 30 years, and I'm at a place now where I can just share and give what I've learned. And, you know, and that's, otherwise it's just be, hey, I've had a great journey. I've had a great time. I've learned a lot of stuff. I'll just keep it to myself and leave the body. But I think the point is to share it, really. Definitely. Otherwise, I mean, yes, it has transformed my life, which is what I initially wanted it to do. And now it's done that. Time to give it away. Because I know it's worked for me, so I think it will work for other people.
Definitely. And, you know, I think that's part of my feeling as well. And it's funny because, you know, I see so much stuff on Facebook saying, oh, you've got money blocks if you're not charging like $1,000 or $2,000. And I remember sitting there and I was like, do I have money blocks? And I was like, I don't feel I do have money blocks. I feel my purpose is, like you said, to share my knowledge, you know, via different platforms, and to help people to connect and to find their tribe as well. So, you know, I've got a Facebook group which I set up because I was like, I'm by myself here when I went through my awakening, trying to figure out, you know, talking to like using crystals and angels. So I thought I'll just set up my own Facebook group and invite people in that I sort of know who have similar beliefs and values. And, you know, it's grown steadily over the years, but it's not, again, it's not something I charge for. And, you know, like you said, charging, for me, if you charge $10,000 for a program, you'll help one person. Whereas if you're doing it either for nothing or for a very small amount and sharing that knowledge, you know, you're more likely to affect so many more people.
Yeah. Well, the ethos we had while I was at Alternatives was try and keep it as reasonable priced as possible to get as many people who want to access the program. So while I was at Alternatives, we were a pretty abundant organization, actually. You know, money was not an issue, even though we charged less than a lot of people were doing. I mean, we had to pay fees and we had to pay staff and everything, but that model worked very well. And so in my business, I thought, if I keep what I do charge for very reasonable, so people can access it if they want to, and then, you know, so I do webinar classes, which are, I think, £44 for a 2-hour class. And they, you know, I did have one class which had 260 people join, you know, so of course, if it's kind of really reasonable and accessible, more people can join. It doesn't mean I'm going to be unabundant. So actually, I'm in my life now, I'm more abundant than I've ever been, following this model of make it very reasonable and very accessible so people can join and give away a load of stuff. Because the thing I enjoy the most doing is creating the material on YouTube, and that's my most enjoyable. It's my creative outlet. Creating and getting the images done, getting the putting the music to it, and creating a video that I look at it, that all of the features is great. Me and my partner watched this kind of documentary on Pixar, which is a kind of fun, I don't know, 3D or 4D organization probably, and it's fun, highly creative. And just listening to how the people work there, and I thought, you know, this is what I want to do: have a creative life. I enjoyed putting all these bits together, and I like watching the Pixar thing, because all those people seem to absolutely love their job, and that's why I don't want to work in a corporation, but I want to love what I'm doing and focus more on that. And so I absolutely love sharing, and I love helping it make a difference, like sending a wave around the planet. That's what I want to do. Yes, I do one-to-ones, and it's great helping individuals shift, but really my work is to help the collective shift, I would say.
Yeah. Well, I think you're definitely doing that, Steve, with your transmissions. And I, for one, am definitely grateful that, you know, you have shared them for free and shared that knowledge, because, like I said, they've really helped me over the last few years. So I'm sure they've helped the other 146,000 listeners as well, you know. And, you know, I feel like you said, I feel like that's part of, like, our purpose, and some starseeds as well, is to spread that wave, you know, and to be there to support others as well.
Yeah, great.
Fabulous. So thank you so much, Steve.
Pleasure.
I really, really appreciate you coming and speaking with me. So what I will do is I will put like all your details in the comments below and websites. So if people want to come and find you, I'll put the link to your YouTube channel in there as well, so they can come and listen to your amazing transmissions. And yeah, really, really appreciate you spending your time with me today. So thank you.
Thanks, Lindsay. Lindsay, lovely speaking with you.
Thanks, Steve.